It's been a few years since I dropped the original 10 most iconic 𝗙𝗏 patterns in jungle history, and it's still one of my most popular videos on the channel. So today we're finally going to do part 2, another 10 legendary tunes that define the 𝗙𝗏 break in jungle music. I'll be chopping, processing, and recreating each pattern with bass and samples to show you how the masters did it. Let's dive in. Before we get started, if you haven't seen the first series of this video where I go through 10 of the most iconic jungle tracks, you can check it up here. Also, feel free to use the time-stamped chapters to watch this in sessions. There's lots to take in, and every track is a masterclass. And here's an original sample of the 𝗙𝗏 break, all 4 bars here. It's important to get familiar with the 𝗙𝗏 break and all its little bits and pieces. Each hit, snare, kick, ghost hit, they all sound different. And depending on the sound you want, you're going to want to select different parts of the 𝗙𝗏 break, different snares and hits. Now, the most used section of the 𝗙𝗏 break is this section here, which I'll color blue. Essentially, this section has all the essential parts we need. It has a really nice fat sounding snare. The secondary snare also sounds good. And one of the most important parts is it has a full kick and full hi-hat or ride section, which isn't found on anywhere else in the 𝗙𝗏 break. The kick sounds really full here. And then you have these ghost sections here, or I like to call it a shuffle. This one has a little shuffle snare and a shuffle kick or double kick, where this one has a double shuffle or double snare shuffle. And then finally you have the crash section here, followed by this little snare. So this essentially is the most used section of the 𝗙𝗏 break due to all these little bits that sound great. And we'll be using pretty much this section of the 𝗙𝗏 break in this tutorial. Now, I also want to mention that this particular snare here also sounds really good, and sometimes it is used a lot as well. It just snaps and has a different kind of harmonic or resonant frequency there. By the way, if you want to follow along, you can download the original 𝗙𝗏 break down in the links below. So let's go into the audio mode, and then first let's make some changes to the 𝗙𝗏 break so it's easier to chop. Click on warp, which helps us sync the audio to the project tempo. Now, if you see my previous videos, you know that I prefer chopping up my breaks with recycle and then sequencing it in MIDI. However, thanks to someone who commented below, I learned that you can do something similar with audio mode in Ableton. Firstly, we're going to select the beats mode, which chops the audio into slices before stretching it. Now, make sure you have preserve set at transients. This tells Ableton what slice size to protect when it's stretching the audio. If I choose transients, it keeps each drum hit intact so the groove stays punchy. Now, there's different transient loop modes here. Watch what happens with forward mode when we play our beat at a slower tempo, such as 50 BPM. The audio stops once it reaches the end of the slice. Now let's try forward loop mode. So in this mode, the audio is looped once it reaches the end of the slice. And then we have the ping pong mode. I find this mode is the closest to recycle. Once it reaches the end of the slice, it'll play it in reverse and then forward again, creating an artificial tail. Using this method will allow our 𝗙𝗏s to sound smoother when we're chopping it up and playing at slower tempos. And essentially what we're going to do here is we're going to quantize the main hits of the 𝗙𝗏 so it makes it easier to cut up. So we're going to line up the transients. So zoom up real close and then just add a warp marker to the beginning of that transient and move it. I'm just going to move this to the 1 here. And then the snare, move it to the next 8th note or quarter note. If you want to change the grid, I'll make it easier. put it to quarter or eighth notes. You can see the lines. Here's the next snare here. And we're going to add a warp marker and just line it up. And then over here, number 2, we'll just add it. We just want to quantize the main hits so it becomes easier to chop it up when we're rearranging the hits. If you want things to be even tighter, you can warp and quantize all the other hits, such as the ride here, the ghost notes here as well. However, I want to keep it sounding more human with the original groove of the 𝗦𝗏, so I'm just quantizing the main kick and snare so it's easier to chop and rearrange. So here it is with all the warp markers, and currently I'm playing the 𝗦𝗏 at 138 beats per minute, which is close to the original tempo. Now, it might sound off because of the warping right now, and we are at a slower tempo, but let's bump it up to old school jungle tempo, which is around 163 beats per minute. And that should sound more natural. If you're still hearing anomalies in the rhythm, you can tighten it up a little bit. Just add a few warp markers in key positions, such as the beginning of this hit here. Someone commented, why don't I use complex mode or complex pro? I don't like those methods with break beats because it adds anomalies or artifacts and it changes the overall tone of the break. I find beats is probably the most natural sounding to the original break. And once you have all the warp markers lined up, you can now chop it up into its different sections. Then this will make it easier to rearrange. So I have the kick here. I have S1, S2, the snares. I have Ghost 1, Ghost 2, the crash, and snare 3. And now we can move on to arranging the sequences. All right, the first sequence we're going to recreate is 𝗙𝗢𝗪𝗡𝗧's Arabian Nights. And here is a clip of the original track. Love the 𝗦𝗏 pattern with the 808s on this. And by the way, most of the bass and synth sounds I'm using today can be found in my gnarly Volume 2 Serum pack, as well as my Jungleism Serum 2 preset pack. You can learn more down in the links below. All right, so the pattern starts with 2 kicks like this, so we can copy and just paste it to a new lane. And followed by a crash. Like that, and like that. And to fill that gap, we're going to add one of these kicks here and a kick here as well. Then there's another kick here and then a short snippet of a crash here and here. And then we're going to use this snare over here and fill in this gap. Now the next bar has 4 kicks like this. And then copying Ghost 1 to fill out the second bar like that. And the very last rendition of Ghost 1, we're just going to take this little hi-hat, this 16th note section, just duplicate it so you have 4 of those. And then we're going to add a crash at the end of the 4th kick like this. Now to get it to sound the same, the 𝗦𝗏 break has to be pitched up by 2 semitones, so we can highlight this entire section. Shift tab and hit 2 in this pitch parameter here. And this will pitch all the slices up as long as you selected it all. Next, we're going to process the 𝗦𝗏 to get a sound near exact. Now, you can EQ it by ear, and I used to spend hours trying to match the EQ. However, now we have tools that allow us to EQ match, and these are pretty good. If you have Pro Q4 or Smart EQ, I believe Smart EQ can also do it. I'll be using Pro Q4 today. I'll show you quickly how that is done. If you have the original one, you can load Pro Q4 to the original track, and then also load up Pro Q4 on your 𝗦𝗏 break over here. So once you have Pro Q4 loaded, you can, and this is loaded on my original 𝗦𝗏 break layer here, click on the bottom center here. And this will bring us a view of all the instances of Pro Q4. If you hover on this little drop down icon on the far right of the graph, you'll find that there's a button called EQ Match. Click on EQ Match. We can either choose reference or sidechain, but I'm just going to use other instance. And the very first one is actually on the 𝗦𝗦𝗢𝗔𝗘𝗦 track. So I'll be choosing this first one here. And what we do is just play the track. So I'm playing, essentially it's playing the 𝗦𝗦𝗢𝗔 track into here. It'll listen for it. However, I'm just going to have the 𝗦𝗦𝗢𝗢 track muted. It can still hear it while we play the original Amen. And you'll see the button match light up. You can just hit match. And then you can choose the number of nodes here, right? So the less nodes, the more general. The more nodes, the more detail. I find somewhere in the middle is okay because once it gets too much, it becomes hard to manage. So we'll just click on finish here and just exit on the top right just to see our graph. Now, since the original 𝗦𝗦𝗢𝗢 track has a sub bass, it'll try to match that sub frequency, which is unnecessary. So you're going to have to remove that. And it's super high in terms of gain. So we're going to have to change the graph to 30 decibels so we can actually see the node here. We can click on the node and just delete it. And then here's the Amen, our version of it. Now you may have to make additional changes, such as these notches here create kind of a resonant peak, which we may not need. Well, I think we might need that one, but perhaps not this one. And that sounds much closer. So it's not exact in terms of matching. You'll still need to make little changes here and there, remove certain nodes or add your own nodes. You still have to use your ear and listen critically to see if it matches and what adjustments you need to make. Now, just one small detail of the sequence here. This cross section in the original kind of has a swishing sound. That's created by a low pass filter suite. So I've added auto filter into the track here. Actually, I'm also boosting up the drive here to add a bit of saturation to the break. And we might have to bring the gain down on the mixer so it's not too loud. Essentially, I'm just automating the frequency of the filter. We'll just add a lane here by right-clicking. I'm automating and bringing it down to about 3 kilohertz in this section. There's also other sections here that do it to create that swish sound. So here's before without the sweep, and then with sweep. So a bit of a swish, and now we can hear the full sequence. And here's the final result with an 808 bass from the Jungleism Serum pack. By the way, if you enjoyed this video and you want to support the channel, you can check out my Jungleism Serum 2 preset pack, which contains massive jungle breaks chopped up in Serum 2, mapped to various effects, and with MIDI patterns so you can create jungle on the fly. Watch this as I play an Amen break over some bass. So super fun, and you can just hit the random notes and you can create new patterns just like that. The macros are fun, so you can manipulate the Amen. Here's another preset from the pack inspired by Paradox's Love Her, chopping up 2 breaks, one in oscillator A and B. And here's another one inspired by Jungle Jungle by Total Science. And just to show you, all 4 layers are presets from the pack, manipulating the samples in Serum 2. Super fun. It also comes packed with a bunch of bass sounds and synth and leads, so you can make a complete jungle track just from the pack. Here's a familiar old school stab. And you can use the macros to change it up. And if you need more bass sounds, you can check out my gnarly Volume 2 Serum preset pack, which contains tons of nasty bass sounds for drum and bass and jungle. Also, if you're looking for more old school jungle breaks, check out the OG Jungle sample pack. Amazing pack for proper jungle. You can learn more about gnarly Volume 2, OG Jungle, and my Jungle Serum 2 preset pack down in the links below. Alright, the next pattern is Amazon 2 or 𝗙𝗥𝗘𝗦𝗙𝗢𝗙's Beat Booyah. Now this sequence uses pitch bending snare rolls, and with this kind of thing is a lot easier to do in MIDI. So we're going to be doing this with the Amigo sampler. Alright, here's the Amigo sampler, loaded the entire 4 bars of the aim and break, and I've chopped up each slice. If you're new to the Amigo sampler, you can learn more about how to use it in my tutorial up here. Essentially, each slice is mapped to a MIDI key, and this allows us to sequence it in MIDI. Before we do that, let's just add a bit of EQing. So I did this just by ear, just by boosting some of the mid and high frequencies here. Essentially, I boosted around the 6K area and the 1.5 area. And I've also added some compression to the aim and break, threshold of -18. And then these settings here. Just a quick process of the aim-in so it sounds better as we sequence it. Alright, the first section of Beat Booyah essentially is a bunch of snares in the first bar. And remember I mentioned each snare sounds different, so I believe we want the snare from the second bar, which is D♯4 here. And we're going to add a snare here and here. And then we're going to have a snare roll with, I think, these are 32 second notes here, like that. And then we're going to have kind of a ghost note or shuffle here. So we ka there. And then fill these with an open hi-hat, which is that one there. All right. And then on to the second bar, we have kind of a regular aim-in sequence with the kick here. So kick, hi-hat, and we have the snare again. And then we just follow with the shuffles. And then a double snare at the end. Now we just switched this guy with one of these as well. They just do that. Alright, so that's the first 2 bars. Alright, the next 2 bars start with the crash on the first bar and a kick on the second bar. So like this, and then a kick, followed by its hi-hat. And then we have a bunch of snare rolls like this. And then more here. Then followed by a full snare like that. And this, the last 3 snares here is actually playing a dotted quarter note. So a quarter note is this long. Dotted is just half as long, extended. So then we have ba ba ba. Now keep in mind, this is just the first 4 bars of the drop in Beat Booyah. The entire track is a lot more extensive, a lot more changes. I think this is one of the iconic parts of the drop, so we're just focusing on this. Now the reason we are using Amigo Sampler is that it has a bunch of functions that replicate old school time stretching and other techniques, which is perfect, especially for recreating that old school jungle sound. For example, we might want to stretch that snare, so we'd have to turn on stretch and then set the percentage amount as well as the cycle, which is pretty much the size of the grain So all these parameters have to be automated because it changes throughout the track. So we have to enable or expand the Amigo sampler device view in Ableton, so you can see all the parameters on the bottom here. Essentially, you can choose the parameter you want to automate, right click, and add or show to a new automation lane. So we're going to turn on the stretch parameter here for that first two snares, and then turn it off here. However, with this snare roll here, there's a volume automation. So there's the volume here that slides up. And then at the end here, the aim break pitches down. So we have the pitch, which is the pitch modulation here. We're pitching it first by 4 and -14. And I think we turn off the stretch in this section. Otherwise, if the stretch was on, it would sound like that. There's anomalies. Okay. And then there's more automation. So every time there's that snare roll, first and foremost, there's a volume going from from down here, 25 to 40. However, there's also a pitch modulation, which goes down, up, and down again. So that's how you get that kind of cartoony snare bend. All right. And one more snare roll here with the volume fading up. No pitch bending. And then the last three snares, which is these three here, it pitches up. So it goes from 4, 6, and 8. And here's the sequence. You can see it. Doing this in audio will be a lot more time consuming, but with Amigo, it makes it a lot simpler to do these automations and pitch bends. Now, layered with the 𝗙𝗏, there's another break, and I believe it's the Soul Pride break by James Brown. So here's a sample of the Soul Pride break. Now, the Soul Pride break is very long. This is just one section of it. Essentially, I'm going to take this section and then duplicate it so it's more like this. And then copy this section and move it at the end. And then let's pitch it up by 5 semitones. So we have this. And let's just add some EQing and compression and just bring the volume down a bit. All right, and then we can duplicate this across the pattern. Also, I just remembered, layered with the 𝗙𝗏, the 𝗙𝗏 crash is also playing on top. So there's a separate layer here of the crash. It is played a lot quieter. It's just in the background to fill some of the air. And if we play all three layers, it sounds like this. All right, and now let's hear it in context of the sub bass. All right, next pattern is DJ Sync's Super Sharp Shooter. All right, first bar of the Super Sharp Shooter break is essentially a two-step drum and bass pattern, which is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, the snare here with the 2 and 4, and then we're going to add a shuffle, go shuffle 2, and there's a crash as the kick here, and we can just extend that part like that. And if you're curious what the two-step and other patterns such as 𝗙𝗏𝗏 and even 𝗙𝗏𝗏 are, just check this video here where I go through all the most popular drum and bass patterns. The following pattern will be a 𝗙𝗏𝗏 pattern, which is a kick and a snare like that, followed by the same, and then another snare to end to fill it out, and then followed by a 𝗙𝗏𝗏 pattern, which is essentially these hits here, and then filling this last section like that. So here's the pattern. And then with some EQ matching, we have this. The fourth bar is filled with a variation of the Cold Sweat break by James Brown. Here's the original break. Now we just want this section here and this kick, this chop here. We just color this yellow so we can see that's the kick. Essentially, we want to create a two-step drum and bass pattern, which is 𝗏𝗏𝗏, and then we can add the kick here and the snare here. And this little shuffle is just doubled, so now we have this. And then we just want to take that, pitch it up by 5. And then let's add some EQing and compression. And I'm also using this Samplex plugin, which I've been using for many years now. It's a great way to add some bit reduction to your track, give it an old school sound. And here it is in context of the bass line using a preset from Jungleism. If you want to learn the bass patterns in this video, comment and let me know. Next up, we have Roni Size, All the Crew Must Big Up. Alright, so start with 2 kicks back to back, and then followed by snare 1 on the 4th beat here. And then there's another snare over here, and we're going to use snare 2. And then we're going to fill this gap with this hi-hat here, except it's going to be very small snippets like this. I believe this is a 16th note. And then we're going to copy this hit of the ghost note, the little snare shuffle, and this is going to fill in the rest of the gaps. Take this section and pitch it up by 3 semitones. And just one small detail, this little section here will be replaced by this mini kick here from the double kick. So now we have this little section. For the next 2 bars, we can duplicate this section. And we're just going to take out this section here and then just copy this section here, the snare and shuffles. So we have this. And this is going to be an odd move, but if you listen to the intricacies of this section in the tune, these ghost notes are replaced by kind of this little half snare section here. Now we're getting into micro-editing these hits here. We're going to take the small snippet of the Go Shuffle. This section is the ride. We're going to duplicate it so it hits twice. We also do it here. And this one, we do it 4 times like that. With some EQ matching. And then some compression here. Give it a more smashed sound. The ratio is set to 6, so it's compressing it a little more than usual. A standard setting is at 4, so 6 is a little bit more. The attack is around 15 milliseconds. That allows that transit to snap a little bit, so it's not so crushed. Otherwise, if it was super fast over here like that, now it sounds really smashed. So if you want the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 to have a little bit of snap, open it up. Usually from 15 to even 60 milliseconds, depending on how snappy you want it. All right, and here it is with the bass. Next, we have Doc Scott's Unofficial Ghost on Metalheadz. All right, so this track switches between 2 breaks. Firstly, the break from Alex Reese's remix of Model 500, which we call the Reese break. And this cuts into the 𝗏𝗏𝗏. Now first go into the break, and we're just going to quantize all the hits on the eighth notes, just make sure the transients line up exactly to the grid. I see this one's a bit off, so we can fix it a little by snapping it right on here. This is important because the Reese break has these micro transients. Now, if we keep these transients intact by having it here, it'll make it sound really snappy, which isn't a bad thing. But in the Unofficial Ghost break, it doesn't sound snappy. It just cuts and hits like a knife. So we don't want these transients to play out. So we instead want the hits right here. So the snare starts right at the hard transient, not at the pre-transient. Very small detail about Unofficial Ghost. But you only get these small details on this channel because I like that some of you guys are more advanced and detail oriented. To get it exactly the same, sounding the same, you got to get these details right. So having these slices marked, we can now slice up this break into its various sections. And in actuality, we can just cut it like this. I've just named it, so keeping the little hi-hats intact with the preceding hit. So we have the kick, the snare with its hi-hats. Second kick is snare 2. So the first part of the break is taking just this section, and we're gonna create the stompa pattern, which is like that, and then one more kick at the end here. So we have this. All right, and we're gonna take this and pitch it down by -4. So now it's like this. And then we're gonna add some EQ this time. I'm just doing it by ear. I'm just boosting it up around 900 hertz by 10 dB. That's really how you get it to sound this way. Add some compression to thicken it up. That sounds more like it. You can even add a little bit of reverb on this, and I'm just using the return tracks. Now this little pre-transient at the end, it may not be needed, so you can either just fade it out or completely take it out if you like. Zooming out, we're just gonna hover over these 2 bars and just duplicate it 4 times, and then we're going to fill the gaps with the Amen. But before we do that, the very last sequence is just a bit different. Instead of the stompa pattern, we're going to be doing the 2-step pattern, which is like this, and we're going to stretch this guy out here, copy the kick, put it here, and we can just bring the hi-hat in like that. Again, we can fade it out over here, make it nice and clean. Onto the Amen. The Amen also mirrors the stompa pattern, and if you haven't clued in yet, stompa is that 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, has that 3 kicks. So we're gonna take this kick section and this snare together, paste it down here, duplicate it again. You can duplicate again, and then just remove the last snare. So we have this. And for this one, we're just gonna pitch it down by 1 tone, so -1. And zooming out, we're gonna fill out that pattern like that. So now we have 4 repetitions, except on the second repetition, we're gonna take the snare and then stretch it out so we get the rest of the ghost hits. So we have this with some EQ matching. And then I noticed I had to bump it a little more with the second EQ to fill it out more. As I mentioned, EQ matching isn't perfect, so sometimes you have to use your ear and boost it a little more. So I'm using EQ8. Makes it sound a little more shrill, which is closer to the original in Unofficial Ghost. And then applying some compression, this time with a 20 millisecond attack, so it allows that snare to snap. Remember, there's different modes on Pro C2. Sometimes I'm using various modes. This one I'm keeping the clean mode. Ratio is 4, and threshold is a bit lighter, around -6. The unique thing about the Unofficial Ghost break is the use of 808 closed and open hi-hats. So it starts with the triple closed hi-hat like this, and then followed by another triple on this position, and then a couple more closed and an open hi-hat, so it creates a rhythm like this. And then the next pattern starts with 8th note hi-hats like that. So that's a bit slower. And then again, like that. So in full. And then the following 2 bars, we can just duplicate that section, and we're just gonna have 2 open hi-hats like that. So now we have this section. All right, that's pretty much it. And then let's hear it with the bass. And I recreated the bass in Serum. It's not exact, but I think it's pretty close. Comment down below if you want to learn how I made that bass. But here it is in full. Next up, Staggered Dub by Breakage. This pattern is pretty easy as well, and is another rendition of the Stompa pattern. It is a pattern that was used a lot in old school jungle, so we're just going to take the first 2 hits and just boom, boom, boom like that. And then we're going to duplicate it so we have another one, except these 2 hits will be replaced by Ghost 1 and Ghost 2. So now we have this. Let's pitch it up by 3 semitones so it sounds a bit more high pitched. EQ matched. And then compression, still using the clean algorithm. Ratio 4, threshold is an 18. And this time I'm smashing the snare transient. So the attack is super fast at 0.005. And that's pretty close. However, the break in Staggered Dub does sound pretty squashed and almost super saturated, even maybe distorted. So I'm using Ableton's Roar, which is an awesome saturation tool, and just bumping the drive up by 8 decibels. All right, and that sounds more like it. And here's the original vocal sample from the reggae track Dance 𝗣𝗥𝗘𝗦 by 𝗤𝗘𝗧𝗦. And we're just gonna duplicate this last note here, and then just put the oh here, and then we should be good. And here it is in context with the bass. Next up, Source Direct, The Crane. All right, taking the first 2 hits, creating the Stompa pattern, except the last hit this time is the crash, except we're going to make it shorter like this. And then we're going to take this kick like that. Then we have a snare here, and then going to fill that gap with a kick. Pitch it up by 2 semitones. Take this section up to here, duplicate it, and then we have snare 1 over here, and then snare 2 over here. And then at the end, we have the crash like that, and filling this gap here with Ghost 1, Ghost 2 goes here, and then just extend this snare slice here. The next 4 bars, there is a variation at the end over here. So just duplicate the section, and we're going to replace this section with snare 2 over here, and just half of the crash right here. EQ matched. Compression, and this time I'm using the punch for a more punchier sound. And attack is at 18 milliseconds to allow a bit of that snare to snap. And then I'm just using the auto filter with the drive of 10 using DFM, just purely using this for the drive circuit, so adding some warmth. Keep in mind, Fab Filter also has an analog emulation. So if you click this button, it's also set to this subtle. Just makes it a bit warmer. Now the trick with the crane is the first few hits of the kick and snare sound very chopped up and almost steppy. So currently it sounds like this, which isn't really, it's close, but it doesn't have that chopped up feel. So the first few hits is cut shorter. So this kick here is missing that section. Even the snare is missing this section here, and even the crash here. So now that gap creates this kind of steppy feel. And that's key to creating this pattern. Right, with the sub bass and an eerie pad behind, we have this. Dirty. Now we have Studio Presha, aka Photex, Presha 3. All right, to create this pattern, we're going to focus on the kicks first, which does this pattern like dum, 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 dum. So we're just going to take kick 1 and just follows that stomp pattern of the kick. And then we're going to take this and we're going to paste it on this position, which usually is a snare, but we have a kick here and then we have a double kick like that. Here it is. And taking snare 1, just fill in the gaps here, like that, and just stretch this guy out here. Pitch it up by 3 semitones, EQ matched, and some compression this time again with the punch mode, and attack is at 8 milliseconds. Some more roar for saturation. This time it's just at about 3 dB. So bump the compression at 25% here. All right, and that bass sound underneath is, I believe, a tom or taiko drum sample with some effects on it. I replicated it with a bunch of processing. The trick here is using a frequency shifter, some chorusing and some EQing, but we'll get into more details if you guys want to learn how to make the bass sounds in this video. But here's the track in full. Next we got Dillinja's The Angels Fell. Now this is the only example today where we're not using a first generation original 𝗙𝗏. We're using a second generation, meaning it's lifted off another track of a processed 𝗙𝗏, namely the 𝗙𝗏 break from Metalhead's Sinister. It's the only way to get it to sound the way it is. Dillinja sampled this break specifically to create Angels Fell. And today's theme is pretty much the stomp pattern. So we're going to take these, this first hit here, just copy it, paste it down here, and we're just going to duplicate it like that, remove the last snare. So now we have this. And then we're going to duplicate it for the second bar, except the last hit, we duplicate it like that. So we have 2 kicks. And remember what we learned in the source direct track to create it more stompy or steppy, create gaps here before the snare, also here. And this double kick, we can either shorten it or just use a fade like that. And now we have this. All right, and let's pitch it up by 1 semitone. EQ match, and this one there's a huge bump in the low end to boost that kick. And then some compression. This time it's at -10 dB. The attack is 50 milliseconds. It really allows that snare and kick to punch through. That's why the kick and snare is really punchy in this one. Keeping it clean, ratio of 4. And then there's some low pass filter automation. Essentially what it's doing is on this section here and here, the cutoff is being lowered to about 3 kilohertz. So you have this. Now, underneath the 𝗙𝗏, there's chops of another break. It's the rotary connection break. And we're just going to pitch this up by 8 semitones, or you can just choose beats and re-pitch it, and then it'll pitch it up to match the tempo at 163. You must know this break if you're an old school junglist. Now, actually, we're just going to take this snare section here. We don't need the rest here. Essentially, at the second bar of the 𝗙𝗏 break pattern here, we're going to take this rotary connection snare, put it here and here, so you have a double like that. And then also just have the same thing at the very end, is that we repeat the snare over here like this. And for this break, I just did it by ear. Since there's an 𝗙𝗏 on top, you can't do EQ matching. So just boosting it like this. Finally, we're just going to take this 2 bars, duplicate it, but this last 2 double kick will be replaced by this time stretch pitch down snare. I'm just using Amigo sampler, playing the snare, pitched down and stretched. So it sounds like this at 240% stretched, 500 grain cycle or size of the cycle. All right. And then right before the drop, I also have a repetition of the snare like this, 8 of them. And there is a pitch bend going down like that. As well, I fade it out on the volume. So you have this. And then playing with the bass, I have a drop bass from Gnarly, as well as the recreation of that Dillinja bass, both in the same pack. And then the Angels Fell sample from Vangelis. All right, finally, we have Johnny Jungle's 94 Kings of the Jungle remix. All right, let's start with the kick and snare. This time we have a snare over here, so a bit sooner than other patterns. I'm just going to fill in this with Ghost 1 and Ghost 2 over here. And we kind of have a stompa pattern which starts early over here. Except we're going to take out the ride here and just copy Ghost 1. Take Ghost 1, fill it here. And take Ghost 2, fill it here. And just duplicate the last hit of Ghost 2. So we have this. Copy the snare. Take this section, this little shuffle section. And we have kind of a kick snare pattern over here. Take snare 2 over here. Fill it with Ghost 1 and then Ghost 2. Duplicate the last pattern just like before. So we have an extended shuffle. And taking snare 2, we're just going to take the snippet of it and do a double. Let's pitch it up by 2 semitones. Now this little double snare here, it does a little pitch step up. So let's move this up to 3 semitones instead of 2. And this one, instead of 4, it'll be 5. So it'll be like this. And just note this Ghost 2 here, which is before the 3rd bar, is in reverse. So Shift R reverses it. And with some EQ matching, some compression, this time an attack of 8 milliseconds, classic mode, ratio of 6, threshold of -14. Then we're adding some saturation with roar, this time about 5 dB, and compression is up to 48%. Just really smashes 𝗙𝗏. And that's pretty much the pattern and vocal sample of this track. There are clips from Steven Seagal's movie Marked for Death. And then with an 808 bass, we have this. Oh yeah. All right, hope you guys enjoyed watching me recreate another 10 legendary 𝗙𝗏 patterns in jungle history. Remember to take down the lessons here, how to chop up the 𝗙𝗏, pitching it up, processing it, EQing it, compression, saturation, all the little details of sequencing, adding pauses, reversing, and here and there. There's tons of tricks you can learn to master jungle and the aim break, and producers are still using these tips today to create fresh jungle music. My name is 𝗦𝗧𝗏𝗦, music producer of over 25 years with releases on Metalheadz, Hospital Records, and Critical Music. If you like this channel, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to support the channel directly, check out DAWinaudio.com for sample packs, preset packs, and Ableton kits to help you along your drum and bass and jungle journey. Links down below. If you want to see more jungle tutorials, check this playlist up here. And if you want to learn drum and bass sound design, check this playlist up here. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay creative and peace out.